Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today, and we are ranking F1 2020 circuits today in a tier list video. Yes, I know, I'm late to the tier list hype on YouTube. I'm late to the party yesterday with the last man standing video, and today as well, but we're finally here with a tier list video on the channel, and yeah, we are ranking F1 2020 circuits today, but not in the way perhaps you think, because people in the past have maybe ranked circuits or, cars or whatnot, based on, the real life experience of those things. We've done tier lists on the Velocia Esports channel before, and you've always based it off the real life thing. But today, because, this is a gaming channel mostly, the F1 game, we're going to be ranking the F1 circuits based on how they are to drive, how I personally feel like they are to drive on F1 2020, the game. So we're going to completely forget all the in real life opinions that people may have of these circuits, what drivers say about which circuits are the best to drive, what tracks give the best races in recent history, all that out the window. We're not going to care about that. Specifically, we're going to rank them on how they are to actually drive with a wheel and pedal set on F1 2020. So here we are then in the tier list game. We've got all 22 circuits that are on the original, obviously, 2020 calendar, the ones that are in the F1 2020 game, and we've got 5 tiers. We've got trash, okay, decent, smooth, because that's how I like to describe a lap sometimes when you kind of nail it in Q3, smooth, and then the very upper echelon here is biblical, obviously, for obvious reasons. So, let's get into this. They're kind of labeled, I think, alphabetically, so we've got Abu Dhabi, Australia, Austria. We'll kind of go with what I'm feeling straight away, what I'm strongly opinionated on. So, we're going to kick things off with a rather trash circuit, one that strongly belongs in the bin. And of course, there can only be one real standout one for me that is securely in the trash tier, and that has got to be Russia. Sochi, terrible circuit to drive. There's no satisfying part about that circuit at all. Even if you hook up the lap, most of the time you're riding the curbs, you're cutting corners, you're extending the circuit. That's the only way to make that circuit somewhat enjoyable, but on no level is it enjoyable in the race either as well. We can look at the circuits in 2 different ways, so there is a bit of a kind of, there's some thought to go through all these circuits, because you can think about it as, what's the circuit like to drive in Q3, flat out, low fuel, but then also in the race, what is it like? So I've got to try and think about those 2, but Russia, firmly for me, either scenario in qualifying or the race, it is an absolute shocker. So yeah, that's going to go in the trash pile. We're going to go with next, I'm going to say USA. USA, I'm going to put in the okay pile, because it's really decent in qualifying. I think when you hook up a lap around Kota, the first sector, really good. Obviously a copycat of like Magnus and Beckett. But in the race, especially on the F1 2020 game, remember, we're talking about the latest F1 game, how it is to drive on there. Against AI or even online people, just longer races with tyre wear, it is really horrendous. It's not an enjoyable experience to drive. So that's why I bring it down to okay. Otherwise, it probably would be in the decent category, or maybe even smooth, because that's how good it can feel when you hook up the qualifying lap. But because it's so bad in the race with the tyre wear and just the general ebb and flow of the track kind of gets lost with heavy fuel, I feel, especially in the last sector, with that very awkward double left-hander stadium section. On heavy fuel, the car just feels so bad through there compared to what it is in qualifying. So it brings it down to okay for me personally. Next, in terms of decent, what do I think is I want to try and maybe a little bit, spread this out a bit and go, decent up to smooth. Biblical, we'll kind of maybe wait to the end to kind of put my favorite circuits from the F1 2020 game. But decent, having a look at everything around here, I'm going to go for Singapore. Decent track on the F1 2020 game. I say that because qualifying, again, is very good. When you nail Singapore, it is so decent. And also the races, I would put it in the decent category, because when you do it again with tyre wear, the circuit can be an absolute nightmare and really not enjoyable to drive. But also at the same time, Singapore, there's just something about Singapore, kind of almost like, maybe Baku in qualifying. You nail it. It's a decent track. I would just say it's a decent track. I wouldn't say it's like a really smooth one that you nail and you love in the race, and also and in quali and the race. So I'll go for the decent there. So let's now pick a smooth circuit, and then we'll kind of go back and fill in the rest, and then like I said, I'll leave biblical to the end of the video. I'm going to have to put Silverstone, the British Grand Prix, in decent, because on F1 2020... It's quite a pain in the race. This would definitely be a smooth for me on the previous F1 games. F1 2019, smooth. Really good circuit. But here on F1 2020, even in quali, it's really not that satisfying. It's not smooth to drive. Like, it's very awkward. The cars feel quite heavy around Silverstone for some reason. You have to chuck on quite a lot of downforce, I feel, to actually match the AI in terms of the cornering speeds they have in qualifying, let alone in the race. The race is so difficult against the AI. And so for that reason, I would put it in decent. I'm not going to lie, Silverstone on F1 2020 could almost be like midway through decent to okay, because it is that difficult and that unenjoyable to drive. Like, I used to love coming to Silverstone, you know, the home GP for career mode, but this year with my team, every British Grand Prix has been pretty tough. I mean, the last one I did in Season 3 was pretty decent. Yeah, I mean, it's just not as good as it has been on previous F1 games. On this year's game, it has been let down a little bit. Just clocked, I actually skipped over smooth. I was meant to put one in smooth. I'm going to put one in smooth, and it's going to be the Mexican Grand Prix. Maybe quite surprising. I don't know. I don't know really. Actually, I can't actually have a general consensus of how the F1 community reacts to Mexico as a circuit, actually. So let me know in the comments below if you guys agree with me. But I think it's a very smooth circuit to drive. Remember, just driving on the F1 game, very, very smooth. Quali, you nail it. It's really satisfying. And in the race as well, fresh tyres. Chef's kiss. Really, really nice. And even with some worn tyres, you know, I've done some bonkers strategies to try and stretch it on F1 2020 and also 2019. But 2020, it's the same kind of thing as 2019. The circuit hasn't really changed too much in the last two F1 games in terms of how smooth it is, I think. You know, you have some really, really great races there. And just throughout the entire race to drive, very, very decent, I would say. So, yeah, that goes in the smooth category. It's not quite amazing. Like, I'm going to enjoy every single race there, I think, because there have been some in the past, I guess, that I have not liked. And Mexico, I don't know, in the wet maybe might not be that great, but smooth, because, you know, we got to save the top echelon circuits for biblical, so we're going to keep that there. So that's smooth. Let's get on to some more other kind of okay circuits or trash ones. France, it straddles trash to okay. I'm going to put it in okay simply because it's actually quite a nice circuit to drive in a quali lap. It's a testing circuit. You know, we came here to Paul Ricard when we first started coming back to it. It is a test circuit. It's not really meant for Grand Prix racing, so therefore that's why it is good at over one lap in Q3. You know, when you're going through Sector 1 especially, if you can nail the brakes, and especially if you've got some more upgrades on like my team career and stuff, it really is decent. But away from that, the racing is just really not great. In the race, the car feels so bad on heavy fuel, and then the races, the producers are pretty bad. But if we're just looking at pure driving more so, there's no real points apart from the last 5 laps of the race where France feels good. So that's why I'm going to put it in the okay category, I would say. I'm going to get it out of the way. Monaco, I'm going to put in the decent category because obviously, for obvious reasons, Monaco is a great qualifying track. You know, on the game, as the drivers say in real life, when you nail Monaco, it really is the most satisfying thing ever. It is a driver's circuit. The driver makes up the most time rather than the car, and it's the same thing with the F1 game. You can really find, if you find the tightest lines and, you know, brush the walls and get the gears right, it's very, very nice. In the race, it's decent. It's decent, I would say. Like, you know, on heavy fuel, it's a little bit tricky, but it's still actually quite a nice challenge, I would say. Like, that's the racing may not be great at Monaco. You know, in the career modes, it's not a very, you know, entertaining race a lot of the time unless you're kind of making your way back through traffic. If you are, then it is a great circuit, because if you get an overtake done, nailing an overtake at this circuit is amazing. But generally speaking, I just feel it's like decent. It's a nice challenge to try and keep the tyres in check and just kind of almost drift the car around the corners in a really nice way. So that's why I would say in the decent category for me personally in Monaco. I'm sure others will really hate it. Maybe on the F1 game, and maybe if you're a pad user, you might hate it, you know, because if you're on a controller, I probably would say it is a trash circuit for controller. But obviously, my personal experience on a wheel, I think Monaco goes in the decent category. I'm trying to think of more that would go in smooth. You know, I'm a very, you know, picky person. I don't have a lot of massive favourites on the F1 game or the F1 calendar per se. I know the smooth circuit. You know what? We're going in there. Zandvoort. I really like Zandvoort. I really enjoy the addition of Zandvoort to the game. Quali, really good. He gets even better in the race, I feel. In Quali, it's really good. In the race, I think for some reason it gets even better. You know, side-by-side action as well. But, you know, with the hard tyre, the way you can lean on it also, if you get into later seasons, it's really decent. Just wring the neck out of it. Chasing down someone at Zandvoort is very, very fun. It's challenging, don't get me wrong. It's very hard sometimes against the AI, but I think it's a really smooth circuit. You've got that first sector, so many ups and downs. I mean, the entire circuit is so many ups and downs. The only flat part is the last sector before you get to the banking. So, and then with the banking, I mean, that's just so satisfying to go around every single time. So Zandvoort is going to get my smooth vote for that reason. Hanoi. I'm going to say for Hanoi, this is tricky because I actually do like the last sector a lot. I like it a lot, but the rest of the lap really lets it down. So I'm going to say okay for Hanoi. If the first sector was a bit more enjoyable, I would actually put it in decent because the last sector is actually a lot of fun in quali and in the race as well. But the first sector, turn 1, turn 2, gopping corners, even the entire first section is just gopping. The first sector, put it in the bin. Second sector, okay, it's just a straight, is it not? And then the last sector, like I said, I actually really enjoy it in quali and the race, but that's why I put it in okay. I would say Austria, I'm going to go for decent. Austria is just a very middle level circuit, really. It's not, when I nail a lap Austria, it's decent. I don't feel like I've really accomplished much. I'm not already, you know, going crazy when I've nailed it in qualifying or anything like that. In the race, there are flashpoints in the race where, you know, fresher tyres on a 2-stop where it can feel very, very flowing to make it smooth. But for that reason, that distinction, that difference, it's not smooth all the time. So I'd say decent for the Austrian Grand Prix. China, I'm going to put in okay. China goes in my okay category. For me personally, I've never gelled too much with China, but it's not trash. I can enjoy China. It is really fun if you are on fresh tyres. On worn tyres, not so much, but you know, unlike maybe, you know, Russia, where all the time there's no difference really in the tyre wear there, and kind of, you know, like you know, USA, that the thing that brought it down was the tyre wear. China, it's more so the ebb and flow is sometimes just not there for me on F1 2020. You know, turn 1 can sometimes be a real nightmare. That line, I just can't get it right. And then the last sector as well, you know, or middle sector really as well. There's it's just not as decent as I'd want it to. You know, it's not easy going. There are a lot of times where I'm driving and sat there in a career mode race and I'm thinking, I just want this to the end. I just want the laps to go by as quickly as they can, hopefully. Azerbaijan, I'm going to go for decent. Azerbaijan, decent to drive. In recent, when it first came to the F1 games, I thought trash. Then every year, it's got okay, decent, might even become smooth soon, you know, because it really has grown on me, because it's not really it's not a flowing circuit, I'll give you that much. So maybe that's why it can never be in smooth, maybe. You know, if the max it can top out is at decent. But the reason why I say it's good, and if it was, you know, more flowing, it would go in smooth, is because when you do nail it, it is actually very satisfying. And in the race, there is a nice ebb and flow of chasing someone down, getting that DRS. Very fun, obviously, to race AI and anyone just online as well. If you're playing online, you know, with the slipstream. So I would say Baku in the decent category, which I'm surprised at, and I'm sure maybe some of you guys don't agree with me on that one, because honestly, I like I said, when I first started driving it, trash, but by F1 2020, last 2 F1 games, I've thought it's pretty decent actually to actually drive. Smooth, I'm gonna put in the Circuit de Catalunya smooth. That one, maybe, people might not agree with me, but Catalunya, it's the testing circuit, a pre-season circuit. There's a reason for that. It's kind of the yardstick circuit in terms of F1 cars, and for that reason, it's really smooth, especially now with the changes they made in Sector 3. That last chicane is so much nicer. Like, when you really get it nailed, in quali especially, but even in the race, if you get that right-hander, and then the left into the chicane, if you get that, because of the way the elevation changes now, when you get that right, it's so much more satisfying to actually come through. And then the chicane, the launch off that is actually not as bad as it used to be. Before, I would say decent to maybe okay even with how bad it has been in the past. But yeah, really decent. And also with the high downforce cars on F1 2020 now, and the way compared to F1 2019, there's no more understeer at high speed. So F1 2020's handling model actually unlocked some more potential and driving pleasure with Catalonia, I feel. Especially through turn 3, it wasn't flat in F1 2019 at first. You had to lift off, and then once you got upgrades, it was flat. With 2020 handling now, with it being flat straight away, yeah, really, really smooth, really decent, nice ebb and flow. Even when you're fuel saving, tire management, it's still just such a flowing circuit. Like, I'm lifting and coasting, protecting the tires as much as I can, and it's still just a nice like flow. You just kind of go through, and the laps just fly by. So that's why I'm going to say it's in the smooth category for me. Bahrain is a tough one here because I'm going to put it in okay. I'm going to put Bahrain in okay. But honestly, for me, a lot of the time, it is actually trash. Like, I'm going to put it in okay because if you do get it right, and I don't do that often, but I have done it on occasion where I've hooked it up and I actually felt good about it. It is okay. It is an okay circuit. It would be trash if it wasn't for maybe the last sector, you know, up the hill. When you get it nailed, it really is very, very nice. And I guess the first sector is pretty okay. But the middle part, the downhill braking, the left-hander, nightmare, hate it. It would go in trash if it wasn't for everything else, basically. So I'm going to put it in okay. Not really. I'm not jumping. It creates good races, but we're talking about just driving here. Just to drive, it's just okay. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Now, this one, I've got to put it in the trash because I can't put it on equal level. Abu Dhabi is not the same as USA or Hanoi or China or Bahrain. It's going to have to go in the trash category. And I go back to France, almost saying in the same kind of length, I'm almost tempted to put France back in trash and not okay, because it definitely is a lot worse than these four, but it's not as bad as Russia. And Abu Dhabi, the reason I like Abu Dhabi as a finale, because it's a night race, but if it wasn't a night race, no, I would not. I would rather go to Brazil for the finale if it wasn't a night race. So that's the only redeeming feature about it. As a circuit to drive, very awkward. It can have some good you can have some good races in the F1 game. Don't get me wrong, against AI in Sector 3. Obviously, we had a mega battle with Leclerc. But as an actual experience to drive, especially in F1 2020, let's just point out, you guys know, I don't know about you guys, I'm trash at that hairpin. That hairpin at the end of Sector 1 into Sector 2 is just, or end of Sector 1 rather, is just so bad. Like, the rotation is horrendous on this year's handling model, and that's why I'm going to put it in the trash category. The Japanese Grand Prix, that's another smooth one for me. Very, very smooth, especially now they got rid of the bump. In F1 2019, it would have been decent. But now, they've got rid of that bump on the last corner. Smooth. Real smooth. You nail Sector 1, one of the best sectors ever on the F1 game, I think. It's really, really nice. It always has been on the F1 game, to be fair, but even more so now with the high downforce cars as well. And the rest of the lap, yeah, you hook it up, and it's really good. Even in the race, even when I've got tyre wear around Japan, and the car feels horrendous, I still enjoy going around and pushing the limits of the circuit around Japan. You go through the middle sector, and you're kind of, right on the edge, dipping a tyre onto the AstroTurf, maybe a little bit on the gravel sometimes, and it's just, you really push the max, and it's just always smooth, always is, no matter what the occasion, really. A controversial one, this is going to be, but Brazil, for me, just okay, to actually drive. Remember, to drive, just to drive, it's okay. It's okay for me personally. I've never gelled at Brazil. I can never get the center S correct against AI. I've never found a way to not make it feel like the most awkward section in the world at any circuit, pretty much. Middle sector redeems itself. Very nice. Last sector, it's just the hill, basically. But that first sector really ruins it for me. And then even in the race, with tire wear, it can be a nightmare. The front right tire, sorry, it just goes on fire. Really, really poor experience in the race to drive, and that's just me personally. I know a lot of you guys will love Sao Paulo. Remember, we're not doing it as a circuit, as a track to drive on the game. I think it's just okay. Obviously, in real life, different story. I love Sao Paulo in real life. It's a great place. Like I said, if it wasn't for the night race at Abu Dhabi, I would say let's go to Brazil for the finale every single time, because the races could be banging in real life and in the game. But to drive on the game, for me personally, just okay. But that's just because I just don't like it. I just don't gel with it. I've not done maybe enough practice to maybe get better at it, but that's just where we are. That's why I'd say it's okay. For the Italian Grand Prix, I'm going to put it in okay as well, just because I'm good at Italy, I feel, but it's just, obviously, it's just basically low straights, some chicanes, not that satisfying to drive. I mean, it's satisfying to drive in its own kind of Monza way, like, oh, I've not mucked up the brake zone, I've not locked up into the first turn, and I've got that all right. But yeah, and especially in the race, when you're saving fuel and you're on DRS trains and you've got some tyre wear, sometimes it can actually be quite dull, quite frustrating to drive. You want to get through to the end, in my opinion, so I'm going to go with okay for Monza. Now we're getting down to the last 4, and we've not put anything in biblical just yet. We're going to get to that. So we're going for the last 4. I'm going to go for the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm going to say it's in the decent category. Kind of like Monaco and Baku. You know, on a qualifying lap, you know, it's Monaco, but there are barriers. On a qualifying lap, Hungary feels great. In the race as well, Sector 2 has a real nice ebb and flow to it. You know, when you've got fresh tyres, Sector 2 is lovely. In the race, sometimes the tyre wear can be a bit high, so that's why I wouldn't say smooth. Like, if there wasn't an issue in the race, if it didn't feel horrendous at times in the race, I would say smooth. But for that reason, I'm going to put it in decent. A lot of the time, it is decent. It is smooth, but then sometimes it's just okay. Even to be honest, sometimes if the tyre wear's that bad, it is trash as well. So that's why I would kind of level out to decent then. Australia. Now, in real life, I don't actually like this circuit. I don't think it doesn't. In real life, it doesn't breed good racing. But in the game, to drive, Australia is actually really bloody smooth. It is really smooth. There's been so many times in races where I've had this thing, and I've said it before to you guys, you know, I definitely race better when I'm chasing AI down. Like, I've got that tunnel vision of, you know, I'm trying to, you know, pinpoint someone, I'm using their break points, I'm just closing up on them. And when that happens at Australia, I don't know why, but Australia, when that occurs, no other circuit, apart from maybe one other circuit, has that same homing in, missile-like kind of feeling to me, where you just blur everything out and you're just flying around the circuit because it's so smooth. Admittedly, there's a lot of curbs you can ride and some corners you can take liberties with, but that's why it's smooth, in my opinion, as well. But you just fly around it, and it really is very, very nice. There are times where the tyre wear's a little bit annoying, but not enough for me to put it in decent. It has to be in smooth, because there's too many times where it has been that sensational, really smooth thing. And then finally, in biblical, it takes a lot for me to give something biblical, okay? Really, if we're being honest, we could have just made this 4 tiers, but the biblical upper echelon one is, for me, my favourite circuits. There's never a dull moment. It's always enjoyable and quali, and in the race, it's always a good time, and that's Canada and Spa. You guys know that if you followed me for a while now, ever since I started my channel uploading F1 2012, the first game I was doing videos on, or 2011 technically as well, Canada, Montreal has always been my all-time favourite F1 circuit to drive on the F1 game. I was actually quite rapid back in the day, like compared to actually like community people as well, when the community was quite small on F1 2012, but then obviously much faster people came around, but I still enjoy it. Even if I'm slow at it, I still bloody love it. It's so nice. There's just a... It's like I said, with that Australia thing, that tunnel vision, the other circuit that has that tunnel vision effect for me is Canada. When you're chasing someone down at Canada, it feels so good. Even in the wet, it can be a really tough circuit, but it's still flowing. It's still nice. It's a lovely challenge. And then Spa... I mean, Spa is just great. There's just nothing wrong with Spa. There's not a single corner I don't dislike taking on the F1 game, in quali or the race. And so for that reason, Spa's going to go in my biblical one. It creates great races as well, but to drive, like I said, this entire video, it's been about driving it, like actual driving satisfaction on the F1 game. For me personally, Spa always, like Canada, never disappoints, and that's why those two are in the biblical category. So guys, that is my F1 2020 game track tier list of rating them based on how they are to actually drive on the F1 game. I'm sure there's going to be some comments, some disagreements, some agreements. Let me know in the comments below. Far away with how wrong I am on some of these. I'll be interested to see some of your guys' opinions. And if you did enjoy the video, enjoy the concept, you want to maybe see more videos like this, maybe not too often, but you know, ever so regularly, then let me know as well. And of course, if you did enjoy the video, smash the like button. If you're new around here, do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I've been aarava. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.